I stared at my husband's phone screen, my hands trembling as I read the text message for the third time. Can't wait for Hawaii. Finally get to spend quality time with you without all the office drama. It's going to be perfect. The message was from Jessica, his so-called work wife, and it was sent at 11:47 p.m. last night while I was sleeping next to him. Our 10th anniversary trip to Hawaii was supposed to be a romantic getaway, just the two of us, a chance to reconnect after years of him working late nights and weekends. But apparently, my husband had other plans. I'm Sarah, 34 years old, and I've been married to Derek for 10 years. We met in college, fell in love fast, and got married right after graduation. Derek went into tech sales and quickly climbed the corporate ladder. I worked as a graphic designer from home, which allowed me flexibility but also meant I was usually alone. Over the past 3 years, Derek's career had exploded. He was making more money than we'd ever dreamed of, but he was also working constantly. 70-hour weeks were normal. Weekend work sessions were expected. Late nights at the office were routine. And through it all, there was Jessica. Jessica Chen had joined Derek's company about 3 years ago as his executive assistant. She was 26, beautiful, ambitious, and according to Derek, absolutely essential to his success. He talked about her constantly. Jessica organized his schedule. Jessica handled his clients. Jessica knew exactly how he liked his coffee. Jessica stayed late to help him prepare for presentations. Jessica traveled with him to conferences. Jessica. At first, I tried to be understanding. Derek worked in a demanding field, and he needed good support staff. I even met Jessica a few times at company events, and she was always perfectly professional and friendly. She'd compliment my dress, ask about my work, and seem genuinely nice. I told myself I was being paranoid when I felt uncomfortable about how much time they spent together. But the work wife comments started about a year ago. Derek's colleagues would joke about it at company parties. Oh, you need to ask Derek's work wife about that. She runs his life. Or, Derek and Jessica are like an old married couple. They finish each other's sentences. Derek would laugh it off and so would Jessica, but I noticed they never corrected anyone. They seemed to enjoy the designation. I brought it up with Derek once about 6 months ago. I'm not comfortable with people calling Jessica your work wife, I'd said carefully. It feels disrespectful to our actual marriage. Derek had rolled his eyes. Sarah, it's just a joke. It's a common term in corporate culture. It doesn't mean anything. Jessica and I work closely together, that's all. You're being insecure. Insecure? I'd repeated, feeling the familiar sting of being dismissed. Derek, your coworkers literally call another woman your wife. How is it insecure to be uncomfortable with that? Because you know I love you, Derek had said, barely looking up from his laptop. Jessica is my assistant, that's it. If you can't handle me having a professional relationship with a female colleague, that's your problem, not mine. I dropped it because I didn't want to seem like the jealous, insecure wife. Derek had never given me a real reason not to trust him. He'd never cheated, never lied about where he was, never done anything overtly inappropriate. He was just working hard to provide for us to build a future. I should have been grateful, not suspicious. But the truth was, our marriage had been struggling. Derek was never home. When he was home, he was exhausted or stressed or distracted by work emails. We hadn't had sex in 4 months. We barely had conversations anymore beyond logistics about bills and schedules. I felt like I was living with a roommate who occasionally remembered he had a wife. I'd tried everything to reconnect with him. I'd suggested date nights, but he was always too tired or too busy. I'd planned special dinners, but he'd cancel at the last minute because of work emergencies. I'd bought lingerie and tried to seduce him, but he'd fallen asleep before I could even change into it. I'd suggested marriage counseling, but he'd insisted we didn't need it, that we were just going through a busy phase with his career. So when Derek suggested we take a trip to Hawaii for our 10th anniversary, I was thrilled. Finally, a chance to reconnect. 2 weeks of sun, sand, relaxation, and romance. Just us, no work, no distractions, no Jessica. Derek had booked a beautiful resort in Maui, planned activities, even arranged for a romantic dinner on the beach. I'd bought new clothes, gotten my hair done, lost 10 pounds, and mentally prepared to save our marriage. Then, 3 days before our trip, I'd found that text message. I scrolled through Derek's phone with shaking hands. I know it's wrong to snoop, but something had felt off that morning. Derek had been unusually secretive about his phone, taking it to the bathroom with him, keeping it face down on the table, angling the screen away from me when he texted. When he'd gone to shower, he'd forgotten it on the nightstand, and I'd seen Jessica's name light up the screen. The messages between Derek and Jessica went back months. Most of them were work-related, but interspersed were personal conversations that made my stomach churn. Jessica complaining about her boyfriend and Derek offering sympathy and advice. Derek venting about stress and Jessica offering to give him a massage to help him relax. Late-night conversations that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with building intimacy. There were inside jokes I didn't understand. References to lunches and coffee runs that Derek had never mentioned to me. Comments about how much they enjoyed each other's company. Compliments about appearances that crossed professional boundaries. Jessica telling Derek he looked handsome in a new suit. Derek telling Jessica she was beautiful and intelligent and amazing. And then I found it. A conversation from 2 weeks ago. Jessica, I can't believe you managed to convince Sarah to let me come to Hawaii. You're amazing. Derek, I haven't told her yet. I'm going to bring it up this weekend. Don't worry, I'll make it sound like it's necessary for work. Jessica, are you sure she'll go for it? I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. Derek, Sarah will understand. She always does. Besides, I need you there. You know I can't relax without you around. Jessica, you're so sweet. I can't wait. 2 weeks in paradise with you sounds like heaven. Derek, just have to make sure we keep things appropriate around Sarah. Don't want her getting the wrong idea. Jessica, of course, I'll be the perfect professional. She'll never suspect anything. Derek, you're the best. I don't know what I'd do without you. Jessica, you'll never have to find out. I'm not going anywhere. I read those messages over and over until the words blurred. Derek had planned to bring Jessica on our anniversary trip. Our anniversary trip. The trip that was supposed to save our marriage. And he hadn't even told me yet. He was going to convince me, make it sound like a work necessity, manipulate me into accepting his mistress on our romantic getaway. The worst part was the casual way they discussed deceiving me. Like I was an obstacle to work around, not a person with feelings. Like my comfort and happiness didn't matter as long as they got what they wanted. They'd reduced me to a problem to be managed, and Derek was confident he could manage me because I'd always been so understanding, so accommodating, so easy to manipulate. I heard the shower turn off and quickly put Derek's phone back where I'd found it. I needed to think. I needed to plan. I couldn't let him know I knew, not yet. Derek came out of the bathroom in his suit, looking handsome and successful. He'd always been attractive, with his dark hair and blue eyes and confident demeanor. When we'd met in college, I'd felt so lucky that someone like him wanted to be with someone like me. Now I realized that dynamic had set the tone for our entire relationship. I'd always felt lucky to have him, grateful that he'd chosen me. And he'd taken full advantage of that imbalance. He kissed the top of my head absently, the way you'd pat a dog. Big presentation today. I'll probably be late tonight. Okay, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Will Jessica be helping you prepare? Probably, Derek said, not even looking at me as he straightened his tie in the mirror. She's really good at anticipating what clients want to hear. Sometimes I think she knows my pitch better than I do. I bet she does, I thought bitterly. She probably knows everything about you better than I do at this point. Derek, I said carefully, watching his reflection in the mirror. I've been thinking about our Hawaii trip. I'm so excited it's just going to be the two of us. No work, no distractions. Just you and me, like when we first got married. Derek paused, and I saw the flicker of guilt cross his face before he quickly masked it. About that, he started, turning to face me. I need to talk to you about something. Here it comes, I thought. The manipulation, the lies. There's a potential client situation that might require Jessica to be available during our trip. Derek said, his tone carefully casual, like he was discussing something minor and inevitable. She might need to fly out for a day or two if something comes up. I know it's not ideal, but it's a really big account. Could mean a huge commission for us. She might need to fly out, I repeated slowly, as if I was processing this new information instead of already knowing it was complete bullshit. To Hawaii. Just if absolutely necessary, Derek said quickly, his words coming out practiced, rehearsed. And only for a couple days, you probably won't even see her. She'll be working the whole time, taking meetings at a different hotel. It won't affect our trip at all, I promise. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. I wondered how many times he'd rehearsed it in his head, or worse, practiced it with Jessica. I imagined them laughing together about how gullible I was, how easy to deceive. I see, I said carefully. What client is this? And why would they need meetings in Hawaii specifically? Derek hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. He hadn't expected me to ask questions. It's a resort development company. They're based in Hawaii. Jessica might need to tour some properties with them, discuss our marketing strategy on site. You know how some clients are, they want face-to-face meetings. Right, I said, nodding as if this made perfect sense. Well, I guess if it's necessary for work, there's not much we can do about it. Derek's face flooded with relief. You're the best, Sarah. I knew you'd understand. This is why I love you. You're so supportive of my career. Not every wife would be this understanding about business occasionally interfering with personal plans. He kissed me on the cheek, grabbed his briefcase, and left for work. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I allowed myself to cry. 10 years of marriage, and he was willing to bring another woman on our anniversary trip. 10 years, and I was so easy to deceive that he didn't even try very hard. 10 years, and he just lied to my face without a hint of remorse. But as I cried, another emotion started to build beneath the hurt. Anger, white-hot, burning anger. Derek thought I was stupid. He thought I would just accept Jessica's presence on our trip, be the understanding wife, make myself small and convenient while he carried on his emotional affair right in front of me. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to make him regret every lie, every manipulation, every moment he'd chosen Jessica over me. I called my best friend Amanda, who was a divorce attorney. We'd been friends since college, and she'd never particularly liked Derek. She'd always thought he was too controlling, too dismissive of me. I defended him for years, but now I was ready to hear what she really thought. I need your help, I told her when she answered. And I need you to not talk me out of what I'm about to do. What's going on? Amanda asked, immediately alert. She knew me well enough to know I wouldn't call her at 9 in the morning unless something was seriously wrong. I told her everything. The text messages, Derek's plan to bring Jessica to Hawaii, the lies he'd told me. As I talked, my voice grew stronger, my resolve hardening. That son of a bitch, Amanda said when I finished. Sarah, I've been waiting years for you to wake up and see what he really is. What do you want to do? I want to divorce him, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. But first, I want to make sure he can't screw me over financially. And I want to make him pay for what he's done. I'm not supposed to encourage revenge, Amanda said, though I could hear the smile in her voice. As your lawyer, I should tell you to take the high road, but as your friend, fuck him up, Sarah. Fuck him up good. Over the next 3 days, I prepared meticulously. I gathered evidence of Derek's messages with Jessica, taking screenshots of everything, backing them up to the cloud, and to a USB drive I hid in my car. I documented the inappropriate nature of their relationship, the lies Derek had told me, the planning they'd done behind my back. I consulted with Amanda about my legal options. Since we lived in a no-fault divorce state, Derek's emotional affair wouldn't technically matter for the divorce itself, but it could influence things like spousal support and division of assets if I could prove he'd been using marital funds to support his relationship with Jessica. Amanda helped me gather all our financial documents, bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, property deeds, everything. I made copies of everything and stored them in a safe deposit box Derek didn't know about. I looked through our credit card statements more carefully and found things I'd missed before. Expensive lunches charged to Derek's card, far more than he could eat alone. Flowers purchased on days that weren't my birthday or our anniversary. Hotel rooms charged in our own city, which made no sense unless he was using them for afternoon trysts. The evidence was all there, I'd just been too trusting to see it. I also started documenting everything in a journal. Every late night Derek came home, every canceled plan, every time he chose work or Jessica over me. I wrote it all down, creating a record of the slow death of our marriage. But I didn't confront Derek. I played the perfect, understanding wife. I smiled when he talked about work. I thanked him for being such a good provider. I acted excited about our Hawaii trip, even bought a new bikini and showed it to him, watching his distracted nod of approval. Derek had no idea what was coming. The night before our trip, Derek came home late, as usual. "Sorry, babe," he said, barely looking at me. "Last-minute stuff with Jessica to make sure everything's covered while I'm gone." "Of course," I said sweetly. "I'm just so excited for tomorrow. 2 weeks of having you all to myself." Derek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was probably thinking about how he'd have to balance time between me and Jessica, how he'd have to sneak away to be with her, how he'd have to maintain the lie for 2 whole weeks. The day of our flight arrived. I woke up early, double-checked that I had everything I needed. Not just clothes and toiletries, but also the USB drive with all the evidence, copies of our financial documents, and Amanda's business card. I was going to Hawaii, but I was also going to war. Derek was unusually cheerful at breakfast, probably because he thought he'd gotten away with his plan. He kept checking his phone, probably texting Jessica about logistics. "Ready for paradise?" he asked, kissing my forehead. "More than you know," I replied, and it wasn't a lie. We arrived at the airport early, checked our bags, and headed to our gate. I was calm, focused, ready. Derek was oblivious, scrolling through his phone, probably texting Jessica about where to meet. "Oh, what a coincidence," Derek said suddenly, his acting almost convincing. "Jessica's here. She must be on our flight." I turned to see Jessica walking toward us, pulling a designer suitcase that probably cost more than my car payment, wearing a sundress that was far too nice for a work emergency. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled in beachy waves. She looked like she was going on vacation, not a business trip. She waved cheerfully, her smile wide and fake. I noticed she was wearing new sandals, designer ones with little crystals. Everything about her screamed vacation, not work. "Derek, Sarah, what are the odds?" Jessica said, her voice pitched higher than normal, like she was performing for an audience. "Jessica has that client emergency I mentioned," Derek said, putting his hand on my lower back in what was probably meant to be a comforting gesture. "She might need to do a few meetings while we're there." "In Maui?" I asked innocently, playing my part in this charade. "What client has meetings in Maui?" Derek and Jessica exchanged a quick glance, so fast most people would have missed it. But I was watching for it, and I saw the moment of panic before Derek's mask slipped back into place. "It's a resort development company," Derek said smoothly, repeating the lie he'd practiced. "They're based there. Jessica might need to tour some properties, discuss marketing strategies on site." "How interesting," I said, smiling pleasantly. "That must be such a hardship having to work in paradise. Poor Jessica." Jessica had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I know it sounds glamorous, but work is work, no matter where you are. I'd much rather be here under fun circumstances like you two." Liar, I thought, but I kept smiling. "Well, since you're here, Jessica, you should join us for dinner tonight," I said warmly, watching both of their faces carefully. "We're going to that amazing seafood restaurant at the resort." "No point in you eating alone on your first night." Jessica looked surprised. So did Derek. They'd probably expected me to be cold or upset, to make a scene, to give Derek an excuse to comfort Jessica and paint me as the jealous, irrational wife. Instead, I was being friendly and accommodating. It threw them off balance, exactly as I'd intended. "Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude on your anniversary celebration," Jessica said, though her eyes said otherwise. She wanted to have dinner with us, wanted to insert herself into our anniversary from the very first night. I insist, I said firmly, my voice leaving no room for argument. Derek's work is so important to our future. If you're here to help with that, the least we can do is make sure you're not lonely. Right, Derek? Derek looked relieved, probably thinking I was being my usual pushover self, making everything easy for him like I always did. That's really sweet of you, Sarah. See, Jessica. I told you my wife was amazing. The three of us boarded the plane together. Jessica was seated in first class, just a few rows behind us. Derek had upgraded our seats as an anniversary gift, but apparently he'd upgraded Jessica's too. I wondered if he'd used our joint credit card for her ticket, if I'd essentially paid for his mistress to join us on our anniversary trip. The whole flight, I watched Derek's eyes drift back to where Jessica was sitting. He texted constantly, and I knew who he was texting even though he angled his phone away from me. Every few minutes, he'd smile at something on his screen, and I knew it was her making him smile, not me. I pretended to sleep, but I was actually watching him through barely closed eyes. I watched him type and delete messages, trying to find the right words. I watched him smile and bite his lip, the way he used to do when we were first dating and he'd text me. I watched him give to her all the attention and care he used to give to me. When we landed in Maui, the warm air hit us like a wall. It was beautiful, paradise, everything I'd dreamed of for our anniversary trip. Under different circumstances, I would have been ecstatic. We took a car service to the resort, and Jessica rode with us. The whole drive, she and Derek chatted animatedly about work stuff while I stared out the window. They talked about clients and strategies and office gossip, and I was completely excluded from the conversation. It was like I wasn't even there, like I was just a piece of luggage they were transporting. The resort was absolutely beautiful, right on the beach, with stunning views and luxurious amenities. The lobby was open air with tropical flowers everywhere and the sound of waves in the background. It should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like a prison I'd volunteered for. Derek had booked us the honeymoon suite. I later discovered he'd booked Jessica a room on the same floor, just down the hall. Room 847 for us, room 853 for her. 6 rooms apart. Easy walking distance for late-night visits. We checked in, and Jessica went to her room while Derek and I went to ours. The honeymoon suite was gorgeous, with a huge bed, a balcony overlooking the ocean, a deep soaking tub, and champagne chilling on ice. It was everything an anniversary suite should be. Derek opened the champagne and poured us each a glass. "To 10 years," he said, raising his glass. "To truth," I replied, clinking my glass against his. Derek didn't catch the significance of my words. He was already distracted, probably thinking about Jessica down the hall. We unpacked in silence. Derek suggested we rest before dinner. I agreed, but I didn't rest. While Derek napped, I went down to the hotel business center and printed out every screenshot I'd taken of his messages with Jessica. Dozens of pages of evidence, their emotional affair documented in black and white. I put them in a folder and brought it back to the room, hiding it in my carry-on bag. I also called Amanda. "I'm here," I told her, "and I'm really going to do this." "Good," Amanda said. "He deserves everything that's coming to him. You remember what we talked about." "Every word," I confirmed. "Call me if you need anything," Amanda said. "And Sarah, I'm proud of you. You're finally standing up for yourself." That evening, Derek and I got ready for dinner. I wore one of the new dresses I'd bought, a blue one that matched my eyes. I did my makeup carefully, wanting to look good for what was coming. Not for Derek, but for me. I wanted to feel strong and beautiful when I confronted them. Derek barely noticed how I looked. "You look nice," he said absently, checking his phone for probably the 100th time that day. We met Jessica at the restaurant. It was a beautiful open-air place right on the beach, with the sound of waves and a spectacular sunset painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Tables were set with white linens and candles. It was incredibly romantic, exactly the kind of place where marriage proposals happened. Jessica had changed into an even more revealing dress, a tight red number that clung to every curve. Her cleavage was on full display, and I saw Derek's eyes drop to her chest before he caught himself. She sat across from Derek, positioning herself so that he had a perfect view down her dress whenever she leaned forward. I sat next to Derek and watched them interact. The way she laughed too loudly at his jokes, throwing her head back in exaggerated amusement. The way she touched his arm when she talked, her fingers lingering on his skin. The way she'd lean forward whenever she spoke to him, giving him an eyeful. The way Derek's eyes lit up around her in a way they hadn't for me in years. They had appetizers and drinks brought to the table. I watched Derek order for Jessica without asking what she wanted, because he already knew. The same way he used to know my order, back when he paid attention to me. I waited until we'd ordered our entrees and were on our second round of drinks. Then I pulled out the folder. "So," I said conversationally, setting the folder on the table between us, "I thought we should clear the air about something." Derek looked confused, his wine glass halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" Jessica's eyes dropped to the folder, and I saw a flash of panic cross her face. Somehow she knew what was coming. I opened the folder and slid the printed messages across the table, fanning them out so they could both see. "I mean your affair with Jessica." The color drained from Derek's face, going from tan to pale in seconds. Jessica's eyes went wide with shock, her mouth forming a perfect O. "Sarah, I can explain," Derek started, reaching for the papers. "Can you?" I interrupted, my voice calm and cold, nothing like the hysterical wife they probably expected. "Can you explain why you've been having an emotional affair with your assistant for months? Can you explain why you plan to bring her on our anniversary trip without telling me? Can you explain these messages where she says she can't wait to spend time with you in paradise, and you tell her to act professional around me so I won't suspect anything?" Derek was silent, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Jessica looked like she wanted to sink through the floor and disappear. Around us, I could sense other diners starting to pay attention, conversations quieting as they tuned into the drama at our table. "I'm not stupid, Derek," I continued, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "I'm not the understanding, supportive wife who's going to smile and pretend this is okay. You brought your mistress on our 10th anniversary trip. You lied to my face. You've been having an affair right in front of me for months, probably years, and you thought I was too dumb or too complacent to notice." "It's not an affair," Derek finally said, his voice weak, grasping at technicalities like a drowning man grasping at straws. "We've never had sex, we've never even kissed, it's just, we're close. We work together so much, we've become friends. That's all it is, Sarah, just friendship." "Friends," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You tell your friend that you can't relax without her. You plan secret vacations with your friend. You tell your friend that you need to keep things appropriate around your wife so she won't suspect anything. That's not friendship, Derek. That's an emotional affair, and in some ways, that's worse than a physical one." I picked up one of the printed messages and read it aloud. "Derek, I quote, 'I need you there. You know I can't relax without you around.' That's not something you say to an assistant, Derek. That's something you say to a lover." People at nearby tables were definitely staring now, some not even pretending to look away. I could see phones being discreetly positioned, probably recording this confrontation. Let them, I thought. Let the whole world see what kind of man Derek really is. Jessica finally spoke up, her voice shaking. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Derek and I just connected on a professional level, and I didn't realize it had crossed a line into something inappropriate. I take full responsibility for my part in this." I turned to her, my anger focused like a laser. "You didn't realize? Let me read you something else, Jessica." I found another message. "Here you say, 'I can't believe you convinced Sarah to let me come to Hawaii.' You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew this was inappropriate. You knew you were helping my husband deceive me." Jessica's face turned red. I thought you knew I was coming. Derek said you were okay with it." "Derek lied to you too," I said. "He told you I agreed to this when he hadn't even asked me yet. He was planning to manipulate me into accepting you on our anniversary trip. Did you really think I would voluntarily invite my husband's other woman on our romantic getaway?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't think of it like that. I thought it was just a work thing that happened to coincide with your trip. You're wearing a red cocktail dress and talking about paradise," I said coldly. "This isn't work wear, Jessica. You packed for a romantic vacation, not a business trip. Stop lying to me and to yourself." Derek tried again. "Sarah, please, let's not make a scene. Let's go back to the room and talk about this privately." "No," I said firmly. "I'm done being quiet. I'm done being understanding. I'm done making myself small and convenient so you can feel big. We're going to talk about this right here, right now." "You're embarrassing yourself," Derek hissed, very aware of the attention we were drawing. "I'm embarrassing myself." I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't sound like me. "You brought another woman on our anniversary trip and I'm embarrassing myself. That's rich, Derek. That's really rich." I pulled out my phone, and both Derek and Jessica looked at it with apprehension. "I've already sent copies of all your messages to your boss, to HR, and to the company's legal department. What you're doing with your executive assistant is a massive liability for the company. At best, it's unprofessional. At worst, it's sexual harassment given the power dynamic. Either way, I'm pretty sure your company is going to have some serious questions about why you brought your assistant on a 2-week vacation to Hawaii on the company dime." Derek shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You did what?" "Sarah, you could ruin my career. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I have a pretty good idea," I said, looking up at him calmly. "You ruined our marriage. Seems fair that you face some professional consequences for your personal choices." People were definitely recording now. I could see at least 3 phones pointed in our direction. This was going to be all over social media by morning. Good. I turned to Jessica, who was crying into her napkin. "I also sent copies to your boyfriend, Michael. I found his contact information in Derek's phone. He deserves to know what kind of person he's dating, don't you think?" Jessica's face went white. "You had no right," she started, her voice rising. "I had every right," I cut her off. "You've been sleeping in my husband's emotional bed for months, maybe years. Michael should know what you've been doing behind his back, just like I should have known what Derek was doing behind mine." "Michael and I are serious," Jessica said, tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "We've been talking about getting engaged." "You just destroyed my relationship." "No," I corrected her. "You destroyed your relationship when you decided to have an emotional affair with your married boss. I just exposed the truth. If your relationship can't survive the truth, that's on you, not me." I looked at both of them, these 2 people who had betrayed me so thoroughly, who had planned this trip behind my back, who had thought I was too stupid or too passive to fight back. "I'm going back to the room to pack my things." "Derek, I'll be filing for divorce as soon as we're back home. My lawyer will be in contact with you about the proceedings." "Sarah, wait," Derek pleaded, reaching for my arm. I jerked away from his touch. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice like ice. "You lost the right to touch me when you decided Jessica was more important than your marriage vows." "I never touched Jessica," Derek insisted, as if that somehow made it better. "I've been faithful to you, Sarah. I've never cheated." "Yes, you have," I said quietly, but with absolute certainty. "Fidelity isn't just about keeping your dick in your pants, Derek. It's about loyalty, trust, priority, attention, emotional intimacy. You gave all of that to Jessica. You've been unfaithful to me in every way that matters. The only thing you didn't do was sleep with her, and honestly, I'm not even sure I believe that anymore." "We didn't," both Derek and Jessica said in unison, which just made them look more guilty. "It doesn't matter," I said, standing up from the table. "Emotional cheating, physical cheating, it's all betrayal. You both betrayed me, you both lied to me, and now you both get to face the consequences." I picked up my purse and looked at them one last time. "Jessica, I hope whatever you and Derek have is worth it. You've lost your boyfriend, you're probably going to lose your job, and you've destroyed a 10-year marriage. I hope that makes you feel good about yourself." Jessica was sobbing openly now, her face blotchy and red. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she wailed. Yes, you did, I said calmly. You meant for all of it, you just didn't mean to get caught. There's a difference. I turned to Derek one last time. 10 years, Derek. 10 years I supported you, believed in you, sacrificed for you. I put your career first. I made myself smaller so you could be bigger. I forgave every late night, every missed dinner, every forgotten birthday. And this is how you repay me, by bringing your mistress on our anniversary trip. Derek was crying now too, tears streaming down his face. Please, Sarah, don't go. Don't throw away 10 years over this. We can work it out. I'll cut off all contact with Jessica. I'll quit my job if you want. Please, just don't leave. I should have left years ago, I said. When you started choosing work over me every single time. When you stopped seeing me as a wife and started seeing me as a maid who occasionally slept in your bed. When you started giving Jessica all the attention and care you used to give me. I should have left then. But I kept hoping you'd change, that you'd remember why you married me. I was wrong. You're never going to change, and I'm done waiting for you to. I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, ignoring Derek calling my name behind me. The other diners erupted in whispers as I left. I heard someone say, good for her, and someone else say, what a piece of work that guy is. At least some strangers had more empathy for me than my own husband did. Back in the honeymoon suite, I started packing my things. My hands were shaking with adrenaline, my heart pounding. I'd actually done it. I'd confronted them publicly, exposed their affair, stood up for myself. For the first time in years, I'd prioritized my own dignity over Derek's comfort. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. Derek burst into the room 15 minutes later, his face red and blotchy from crying. Sarah, what the hell was that? You just humiliated me in front of a restaurant full of people. Do you have any idea how many of those people were probably recording? This is going to be all over social media. My career is ruined. Do you have any idea how humiliated I felt when I found out you were bringing Jessica on our anniversary trip? I countered, not stopping my packing. Do you have any idea how destroyed I felt reading your messages with her, seeing how you talked to her, how you prioritized her over me constantly? I never prioritized her over you, Derek insisted weakly. You literally brought her to Hawaii on our anniversary. I shouted, my composure finally cracking. How is that not prioritizing her? You can't even go on vacation with your wife without your mistress tagging along. She's not my mistress, Derek shouted back. Then what is she? I demanded. What do you call a woman you're emotionally intimate with, who you can't stand to be away from, who you tell all your secrets to, who you prioritize over your wife? What is that if not a mistress? Derek didn't have an answer. He just stood there looking lost. I never slept with her, he finally said quietly. I know you don't believe me, but we never even kissed. It was just emotional, just talking. Just talking, I repeated bitterly. Just sharing your hopes and dreams and fears and joys with someone who isn't your wife. Just building intimacy and connection with someone who isn't your wife. Just making another woman feel special and important and valued while your actual wife felt invisible and alone. Yeah, Derek, just talking. That makes it so much better. Derek sat down on the bed, his head in his hands. I didn't mean for this to happen. Jessica and I just clicked. We work so well together, we understand each other. It felt easy and natural. With you, everything felt like work. You were always upset about something, always needing something from me. Jessica never demanded anything. She was just there, supportive and understanding. His words felt like knives. I was upset because you were never home, I said, my voice breaking. I needed things from you because you're my husband, and you stopped acting like it. I had needs because that's normal in a marriage. But instead of meeting those needs, you found someone who didn't have any needs, who was just happy to take whatever crumbs of attention you gave her. That's not a partnership, Derek. That's you wanting an adoring fan instead of an equal partner. Maybe that's what I needed, Derek said, and his honesty was like a slap in the face. Someone who thought I was great, who didn't criticize me or make demands. Someone who made me feel good about myself. I used to make you feel good about yourself, I said quietly. Before you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obligation. When did I become a burden to you, Derek? When did loving me become work instead of joy?" Derek didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. I finished packing and zipped up my suitcase. "I'm leaving tonight. There's a red-eye back to the mainland. I've already changed my ticket." "You're leaving tonight?" Derek looked shocked. "Sarah, please stay. Let's talk this through." "We've been married 10 years. That has to count for something." "10 years does count for something," I said, echoing what I'd told him before. "It counts as 10 years of my life that I gave to you that I can never get back. 10 years of being second place to your career and now to Jessica. 10 years of making myself smaller so you could be bigger. I'm done, Derek. I'm finally done." "What about counseling?" Derek asked desperately, grasping at straws. "We could try therapy, work through this." "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll quit my job. I'll never speak to Jessica again. Please, Sarah, don't throw away 10 years over this." I looked at my husband, this man I'd loved for a decade. I tried to find some feeling for him, some remnant of the love we'd once shared. But all I felt was exhaustion and relief that it was finally over. "You can't unring a bell, Derek," I said quietly. "Even if you ended things with Jessica right now, I'd never trust you again. I'd spend the rest of our marriage wondering if you were really working late or spending time with someone else. Wondering if the next assistant or colleague would become the new Jessica. That's no way to live. I'd never do this again," Derek swore, tears streaming down his face. "I'd spend the rest of my life proving I could be trusted. You had our entire marriage to prove that," I said. "You failed. I'm not giving you another chance to fail me again." There was a knock at the door. Derek answered it to find Jessica standing there, her face swollen and blotchy from crying, her perfect makeup completely ruined. "Michael broke up with me," she sobbed, fresh tears streaming down her face. "He saw the messages Sarah sent him and he broke up with me. He called me a horrible person. He said he never wants to see me again. He said I'm a homewrecker and a liar, and..." She broke down completely, unable to continue. Derek instinctively moved toward her, probably to comfort her, then caught himself and looked back at me. That moment of hesitation, that split second where he had to decide between comforting his mistress and respecting his wife, told me everything I needed to know. Even now, even after everything, his first instinct was still to comfort Jessica. "You should go," I told Jessica, my voice cold and flat. "This is between me and my husband." "I'm so sorry," Jessica cried, looking at me with red, swollen eyes. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I never meant for any of this to happen." Derek and I just connected, and I thought. "I didn't think." "You thought what?" I interrupted, my anger flaring again. "That he'd leave me for you. Is that what this was about? You wanted to steal my husband and you thought a trip to Hawaii would seal the deal." "No, I mean, I don't know," Jessica stammered, wrapping her arms around herself. "I wasn't thinking long-term. I just enjoyed being with him. He made me feel special." "How nice for you," I said sarcastically. "You felt special while I felt abandoned in my own marriage. You enjoyed his company while I was home alone night after night wondering why my husband didn't want to spend time with me anymore." "I'm so glad you got to feel special, Jessica. Really, that makes all of this worthwhile." "I didn't know it was that bad between you two," Jessica said weakly. "Derek never said." "Of course he didn't," I said, "because then you might have felt guilty. Then you might have backed off. It was easier for both of you to pretend I didn't exist, or that I was fine with him working late and traveling constantly and sharing all his emotional intimacy with someone else." Jessica looked at Derek desperately. "Tell her," she pleaded. "Tell her how unhappy you've been, how disconnected you felt from her, how we didn't mean for this to happen, it just did." I watched Derek's face, waiting to see if he'd throw me under the bus to make Jessica feel better. After a long pause, he said, "Jessica, you should go. This isn't helping." "But Derek," Jessica started. "Please," Derek said, his voice firm, "just go." Jessica left, sobbing, and Derek closed the door behind her. He turned to me, looking defeated. "Are you happy now?" He asked bitterly. "You've destroyed my career, destroyed Jessica's relationship, exposed our private business to strangers. Was it worth it? I stared at him in disbelief. Even now, he was making himself the victim. You destroyed our marriage by bringing your mistress on our anniversary trip. You destroyed your own career by having an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. You destroyed Jessica's relationship by encouraging her emotional affair. I just exposed the truth. Everything that's happening now is a consequence of your choices, not mine. I made a mistake, Derek said. I admit that. But the way you're handling this is vindictive and cruel. Vindictive and cruel would be staying married to you and making your life miserable for the next 40 years, I said. I'm doing us both a favor by ending this now. You clearly don't love me anymore if you ever really did, and I deserve better than a husband who treats me like an afterthought. I do love you, Derek insisted. I've always loved you. No, I said firmly. You loved what I did for you. You loved having a wife who supported your career, who didn't complain about your hours, who made your life easy and comfortable. You loved having me as your safety net while you pursued excitement with Jessica. But you didn't love me as a person. You haven't loved me as a person in a very long time. Derek opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He knew I was right. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. Derek didn't try to stop me. Maybe he finally understood it was over. Maybe he was relieved. Maybe he was already thinking about consoling Jessica in her room down the hall. Goodbye, Derek, I said at the door. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. This is really it? Derek asked, his voice small. 10 years and it just ends like this. It ended a long time ago, I said. I'm just the first one to admit it. I left the honeymoon suite and took the elevator down to the lobby. I could barely see through my tears, but I forced myself to keep moving forward. At the front desk, I settled the bill for my early departure. The clerk gave me a sympathetic look. Word had probably already spread about the scene in the restaurant. I hope your next vacation is better, she said quietly as she handed me my receipt. It will be, I said, and I believed it. Thank you. The car to the airport was quiet. I stared out the window at the beautiful Hawaiian night, the palm trees swaying in the breeze, the stars bright in the clear sky. This should have been the most romantic trip of my life. Instead, it was the night my marriage ended. But as the car drove away from the resort, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The crushing weight I'd been carrying for years, the constant anxiety and sadness and feeling of not being enough, was lifting. Yes, my heart was broken. Yes, my marriage was over. Yes, my life was about to change dramatically. But I was free. Free from a husband who didn't value me. Free from a marriage that had been dying for years. Free to build a life where I was prioritized and valued and loved the way I deserved. The flight home was long and uncomfortable. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window at the darkness and thought about everything that had happened. Part of me couldn't believe I'd actually done it, confronted them publicly, exposed their affair, walked away from 10 years of marriage. But a bigger part of me was proud. I'd stood up for myself. I'd demanded better. I'd refused to be the understanding wife who accepted her husband's betrayal with a smile. When I landed back home, exhausted and emotionally drained, Amanda was waiting for me at the airport. I'd called her from my layover in LA. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a tight hug. You did it, she said. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe I actually did it, I said, starting to cry again. Amanda, I blew up my entire life. No, Amanda said firmly, holding me at arm's length to look me in the eye. You saved your life. Derek was bleeding you dry. Now you get to heal and rebuild. She drove me to her house, where I'd be staying until I figured out my next steps. We'd already planned this. I'd move my stuff out of the house I shared with Derek while he was still in Hawaii, get everything I cared about before he could come back and try to manipulate me into staying. Over the next few days, while Derek was still in Hawaii probably trying to salvage his career and comfort Jessica, Amanda and I moved all my belongings out of the house. My clothes, my art supplies, my books, my grandmother's jewelry, everything that mattered to me. We worked quickly and efficiently, and by the time Derek came back, the house would be noticeably empty. I also met with Amanda's colleague, Marcus Chen, who would be handling my divorce. He was brilliant and ruthless, exactly what I needed. Your husband made a lot of mistakes, Marcus said as he reviewed the evidence I'd gathered. Financially, I mean, he charged Jessica's Hawaii trip to your joint credit card. He's been taking her to expensive lunches on marital funds. That hotel room he booked her, also on your card. You essentially paid for your husband to cheat on you. Can we use that? I asked. Absolutely, Marcus said with a shark-like smile. In a no-fault state, infidelity doesn't technically matter, but the misuse of marital assets definitely does. We can argue that he's been spending marital funds on his affair, which should be factored into the asset division. Good, I said. I want everything I'm entitled to. He made good money during our marriage, but I supported him through the early years when he was making almost nothing. I sacrificed my own career advancement to support his. I want what I deserve. You'll get it, Marcus promised. I'll make sure of it. Word spread quickly about what had happened in Hawaii. Some of the restaurant patrons had indeed recorded my confrontation with Derek and Jessica, and videos started circulating on social media. Most comments were supportive of me, good for her for standing up for herself, and I hope she takes him for everything in the divorce. But there were also cruel comments, people saying I'd overreacted, that I should have handled it privately, that I was vindictive. I tried not to read those, but some got through and they hurt. Derek called constantly over the next few days. I didn't answer. He sent long, rambling text messages about how sorry he was, how he wanted to fix things, how I was overreacting. I deleted them without reading most of them. He also tried to turn our mutual friends against me, telling them I'd caused a scene in Hawaii and destroyed his career over a friendship that never even turned physical. Some friends believed him and stopped talking to me. But the real friends, the ones who mattered, saw through his lies. My friend Claire called me in tears. Sarah, I had no idea things were that bad between you and Derek. He always spoke so highly of you. I never would have guessed he was having an affair. It was an emotional affair, I clarified. Not physical, though honestly I'm not sure that makes it better. It doesn't, Claire said firmly. Emotional affairs can be worse because it's not just physical attraction, it's actual intimacy and connection. He gave another woman what should have been yours. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Hearing validation from my friends helped. It reminded me that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting. What Derek had done was real betrayal, even if he never physically touched Jessica. Derek returned from Hawaii after 5 days. He'd apparently spent the remaining time there trying to do damage control with his company and failing miserably. The HR investigation was ongoing, and his boss was furious about the professional impropriety. When Derek walked into our house, technically our house, though I'd already moved out, and saw how much was missing, he called me immediately. You took all your stuff, he said, sounding shocked. I moved out, I replied calmly. We're getting divorced, I thought that was clear. Sarah, please, can we just talk? Face to face, I need to see you. No, I said firmly. Anything you need to say to me can go through my lawyer. Don't contact me directly anymore, Derek, it's over. It's not over until I say it's over. Derek shouted, his desperation turning to anger. You're my wife, you don't get to just walk away. Actually, I do, I said. That's how divorce works, and Derek, don't threaten me, don't harass me, don't try to control me anymore. Those days are over. I hung up and blocked his number. He tried calling from other phones, but I blocked those too. He showed up at Amanda's house once, but she threatened to call the police and he left. The divorce proceedings began in earnest. Derek fought it at first, refusing to accept that our marriage was really over. But as the weeks passed and I remained firm in my decision, he finally accepted the inevitable. Marcus was brilliant in the negotiations. He got me half of everything we'd built during our 10-year marriage, half the house value, half the savings, half the retirement accounts. He also got me alimony for 3 years, arguing that I'd sacrificed career advancement to support Derek and deserved compensation for that. Derek was furious about the alimony. You have a job, he argued through his lawyer. You're a graphic designer. You don't need my money. Your client's wife worked part-time from home so she could be available to support his demanding career, Marcus countered coolly. She could have advanced much further in her career if she hadn't been playing second fiddle to her husband's ambitions. She's entitled to compensation for that sacrifice. We got the alimony. Derek would be paying me a significant sum every month for the next 3 years. Money I plan to invest in growing my graphic design business into something bigger and better. The settlement also included one particularly satisfying clause. Derek had to repay the marital account for every penny he'd spent on Jessica. Every lunch, every coffee, her hotel room in Hawaii, her flight, all of it. It came to over $15,000, money that would go back into my pocket. Derek also faced consequences at work. The HR investigation concluded that while he and Jessica hadn't violated any specific company policies about relationships, because technically they weren't in a relationship, their behavior had been highly inappropriate given their professional dynamic and the power imbalance. Derek received an official reprimand that went in his permanent file. He was also required to attend training on professional boundaries and workplace relationships. The humiliation of the whole company knowing about his work wife and the Hawaii disaster was punishment in itself. Jessica had it worse. She was transferred to a different department, away from Derek, with a different boss. But the stigma of being the other woman followed her. Colleagues whispered about her. Some openly ostracized her. She'd gone from being seen as a competent, rising star to being known as the assistant who had an affair with her married boss. She ended up leaving the company entirely about 3 months after Hawaii. I heard through mutual professional contacts that she'd moved to Denver to start over where no one knew her story. I didn't feel bad for her. She'd made her choices, pursued a married man, helped him deceive his wife, and now she was living with the consequences. Actions have consequences, a lesson both she and Derek were learning the hard way. Derek tried to continue some kind of relationship with Jessica after I left him. From what I heard through friends who still talked to him, he'd reached out to her after the dust settled, suggesting they could finally be together now that he was getting divorced. But apparently, the reality of actually being with Derek, without the thrill of secrecy and the forbidden nature of their connection, wasn't what Jessica had imagined. Without the barrier of Derek's marriage to make their relationship exciting, they had nothing. They dated for about 6 weeks before Jessica ended it. She told Derek she needed to focus on herself and her career, that she couldn't be in a relationship right now. But friends said the real reason was that Derek was too needy, too desperate, trying to rush into a serious relationship to fill the void left by our divorce. Derek was devastated. He'd lost his marriage, damaged his career, and the woman he'd risked everything for didn't even want him. It would be poetic if it wasn't so pathetic. I, meanwhile, was thriving in ways I never expected. Without Derek's constant demands and drama, without the emotional drain of being in a dying marriage, I had so much more energy and time to devote to my own life and career. I dove into my graphic design business with renewed passion. I took on bigger clients, more challenging projects, started building a real portfolio of work I was proud of. Within 6 months, I was making more money than I ever had, even more than when Derek and I combined our incomes. I moved out of Amanda's place and into my own apartment, a beautiful space with huge windows and great light for my design work. It was smaller than the house I'd shared with Derek, but it was mine, truly mine, and that made it perfect. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage, people I'd lost touch with because Derek hadn't liked them, or because I'd been too busy catering to his schedule. I went out, had fun, remembered what it felt like to laugh without wondering if Derek would be annoyed that I was having a good time without him. I also started therapy to work through the betrayal and rebuild my self-esteem. Dr. Morrison was patient and insightful, helping me see the patterns in my marriage that I'd been blind to. "You made yourself smaller and smaller trying to fit into the space Derek allowed you," she told me during one session. "You diminished your own needs, your own voice, your own worth." Now you get to expand again, take up space, be fully yourself. She was right. I'd spent 10 years shrinking, and now I got to grow again. I traveled, taking trips I'd always wanted to take but Derek had never been interested in. I went to Paris and spent a week visiting museums and cafes. I went to Iceland and saw the Northern Lights. I went to Thailand and learned to cook authentic Thai food. I traveled alone and loved it. Loved the freedom and independence, and not having to compromise on what I wanted to do. I took up new hobbies, pottery classes where I made terrible bowls that wobbled, hiking where I discovered I actually loved being outdoors, photography where I learned to see the world through a different lens. I discovered parts of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I met someone new. His name was Lucas, and he was a photographer I'd hired for a client project. He was kind, creative, funny, and most importantly, he saw me. He was interested in my thoughts, my feelings, my dreams. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He made me feel valued and important. We took things slowly. I was cautious, still healing, still learning to trust again. But Lucas was patient. He understood that I'd been hurt and needed time. He proved through his actions, not just his words, that I could trust him, that I was worth prioritizing, that I deserved to be someone's first choice. "Tell me about your ex-husband," Lucas said once, several months into our relationship. I told him the whole story, the work wife, the Hawaii trip, the public confrontation, the divorce. Lucas listened without interrupting, his face growing more incredulous as the story went on. "He brought his mistress on your anniversary trip," Lucas said when I finished. I don't even have words for how terrible that is. It was terrible, I agreed. But in a weird way, it was also the best thing that could have happened to me. "How so?" Lucas asked, genuinely curious. "Because it forced me to stop accepting less than I deserved," I explained. "It forced me to stand up for myself and demand better. If Derek hadn't brought Jessica to Hawaii, if he'd been slightly less blatant about his affair, I might have stayed in that dead marriage for years. I might have kept making excuses for him, kept believing his lies, kept making myself smaller. His betrayal was the push I needed to finally leave and start over." Lucas pulled me close, kissing the top of my head. "Then I guess I should thank your ex-husband," he said. "His loss is definitely my gain." 2 years after the Hawaii disaster, I was thriving. My business was booming. I was in a healthy relationship with Lucas. I had genuine friendships, hobbies I loved, a life that was fully mine. I'd rebuilt myself from the ground up, and the person I'd become was stronger and happier than I'd ever been with Derek. I heard through mutual friends that Derek was struggling. He was still at the same company, but hadn't been promoted since the scandal. His reputation had been permanently damaged. He'd tried dating but couldn't maintain a relationship. According to friends, he was depressed and regretful, finally understanding what he'd thrown away. I felt a distant pity for him, but mostly I just felt nothing. Derek was someone I used to know, a chapter of my life that was closed. He no longer had the power to hurt me. Then, about 2.5 years after Hawaii, Amanda called me with interesting news. "I ran into Derek today," she said. "At the coffee shop near my office." "How did he look?" I asked, more out of curiosity than actual concern. "Terrible," Amanda said bluntly. "He's gained weight, looks exhausted, seems really unhappy. He asked about you. What did you tell him?" "I told him you were thriving and that he'd lost the best thing that ever happened to him," Amanda said with satisfaction. "He actually started crying, right there in the coffee shop. It was awkward as hell." "That's sad," I said and meant it. Not sad for Derek specifically, but sad that he'd destroyed his life over something that was never real. "He said he wanted to reach out to you," Amanda continued, "to apologize properly. I told him you'd moved on and to leave you alone." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I don't need his apology. It wouldn't change anything." And it wouldn't. Derek's apology couldn't give me back the years I'd wasted feeling second best. It couldn't undo the humiliation of him bringing Jessica to Hawaii. It couldn't erase the pain of all those nights I'd cried myself to sleep feeling alone in my marriage. But more importantly, I didn't need Derek's apology to move forward because I'd already moved forward. I'd healed. I'd grown. I'd built a life that was so much better than anything I'd had with him. 3 years after Hawaii, Lucas proposed. We were on a quiet beach at sunset, just the two of us, and he told me I was the most incredible woman he'd ever known, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life making me happy. I said yes without hesitation. This time, I knew what real love looked like. I knew what it felt like to be truly valued and prioritized. I knew the difference between a partner and a parasite. We planned a small, intimate wedding. Just close friends and family, people who genuinely loved and supported us. My parents, who had never really liked Derek, cried happy tears. Amanda was my maid of honor and gave a toast about how proud she was of me for finding the courage to leave a bad situation and build something better. For our honeymoon, Lucas surprised me by booking a trip to Maui. I'd mentioned once, months earlier, that I'd never gotten to actually enjoy Hawaii because of what had happened with Derek and Jessica. "I want to give you new memories," Lucas said as we checked into a beautiful resort on the beach. "Hawaii should be associated with happiness and love, not betrayal and pain." We spent 2 weeks in Maui, and it was absolutely perfect. Everything my anniversary trip with Derek should have been. We watched sunsets on the beach, went snorkeling in crystal clear water, took a helicopter tour of the island and saw waterfalls from the air. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. We made love and laughed and just enjoyed being together, being present, being happy. One evening, we were having dinner at a gorgeous oceanfront restaurant when I saw them. Derek and a woman I didn't recognize, sitting at a table across the restaurant. Derek looked older, more worn down, the spark I'd once loved dimmed to almost nothing. He saw me at the same moment I saw him, and his face went pale, all the color draining out.